Hey, hi there.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well for a Sunday. We've been off for a while. How was the fishing?
Good. I left some there.
Okay,
Um,
good.
Twice I had I fished with pretty light tackle, so twice I had a fish on that when it decided that this fight was over, it just ripped the line off of my rod and went goodbye. Um,
Smart ass.
but yeah, we caught a lot of fish. I mean, we ate fish every day, and I probably caught almost 100 fish, and everybody else caught fish. Fished out. So yeah, it was good. How are things going in your world?
Well, we're in the middle of monsoon season, so while everybody else is getting baked, we're getting semi-baked and we're getting rain. Haven't
Oh,
although
that's
it
good though.
seems like the rain just surrounds my house and doesn't land here. But it's humid, so I went out and decided I had COVID over the last 3 weeks, so I'm clear
Oh,
now. But yeah, that was fun. And Paxlovid works, and yes, you get the metallic taste in your mouth, so I can confirm that. Was mainly a non-event, and I'm thankful for all the vaccinations and all that good stuff. But sleeping in the other end of the house and staying away from everybody for 2 weeks is not a whole lot of fun.
yeah.
But yeah, it's been good otherwise. We've talked about some of the fun stuff on volleyball, but I'm coaching a JV team of young players, a couple who are pretty funny. I got one who, you know, I'm doing. I talked about the 6-3 offense the other day. Hey, you know what? We can do this together. Let's get Heidi in here.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
being a
no
pig.
kidding.
I'm being a pig here. Here we go. Let's go. We're on this one. There we go. You're up, BJ.
Hey Heidi, good morning.
Morning.
It sounds like we got you out of church this morning, which was always as a kid. That was one of my big goals. Was how am I gonna feign illness or find something else to do on Sunday so I didn't have to go to church.
Yes, well, my children are keeping a running record of how many times they've been there that I haven't been there. So I'm gonna have to make it up, I think.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go on Wednesday nights. Um, so Heidi, just to introduce Heidi a little bit, and we'll let her talk about where she's from and everything. I know her through a couple of avenues, mostly again through volleyball coaches and trainers where we met. Then we've worked together in a couple of cases as teachers for USA Volleyball. Somewhat similar mindsets, although I think Heidi brings a little bit of expertise that a lot of us don't have, which is having the PE background, and we'll get into some of our other the other things that she deals with on a regular basis that most of us probably don't. Uh, Whether it's disadvantaged, I don't know if that's the right word. Maybe you can correct me on that, Heidi. But working with all types of kids and helping all kids kind of learn either in a PE or more specifically in a volleyball setting. So that to me is a source of good information and the reason one of the many reasons for having Heidi on. But Heidi, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background? I know we've had you on once before for our panel discussion on punishment, but I don't think we all kind of went around. So just tell us a little bit about your sporting background and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I have been an elementary PE teacher. I think this is year 19 for me. I have always done sports as a kid. I had four sisters, so I was right in the middle. That was kind of our what we did growing up, and um, I tried a couple different majors before I settled on PE, and just realized that's what I enjoy doing the most. And I kind of stumbled into volleyball when I was in college. I was mentoring for an Upward Bound program, and one of the students was playing high school volleyball in a nearby community, and she needed a coach. So I actually started coaching when I was in college. I helped her program out when we had like an early practice, and they would go late. And then my first job was at my alma mater where I played in high school. So I've kind of gotten into these positions of, I don't necessarily think I'm the most qualified person, but somebody needs help, or somebody needs a coach, and I feel like I'm able to help them out, or maybe I can make their situation a little bit better. So I now I'm the varsity coach. This is my 20th season. I've been at Cloquet High School in Minnesota for 19 years, and I kind of do it all. We have a club program, and we have a youth program that we run in the fall, and I'm kind of involved with all of it.
Well, that's one of our topics of discussion for sure, is running a whole program. I guess I bet the biggest topic on most high school coaches at the moment is all the things that we panic about in the first week. Well, it usually boils down to about one or two things, but what are the things that you feel like you hear other coaches talking about that we can't do this, or what are the things you're seeing in your gym? And I certainly have an opinion about mine, but I'm interested in what you think those items are, and maybe even some fixes to those items.
Yeah, well, I think each program is so different in that, and I first of all I have to thank you guys for having me on, because I don't always agree to do these things, and I get nervous. But I think I know my little community in my area, or like youth athletes really well, and I think I don't really have that much to be able to share with other people. And you go watch some of these club programs that are going year round, and I think if you have a team where a lot of kids are playing club, you're in a different situation than if you haven't seen your athletes since your season ended in the fall. So and then I go travel around, and I go to other tournaments, and I'm in other gyms, and I watch other coaches, and I think, okay, I think I could probably help you out with a thing or two. So as Steve was saying earlier, I think the administration stuff that coaches have to deal with, head coaches have to deal with at this point in time in the year, you can just get so bogged down in, athletes having physicals and being eligible and having to go through the tryout process and scheduling buses. And, I went through like 4 or 5 different college coaches in my years that I played, and I felt like each one got caught up in your first years of, some of that administrative stuff. And so I kind of have a binder for each. I just was finishing mine I have a binder from each one of my 20 seasons of, this is what we did last year. And so we're not having to get bogged down. I keep all my practice plans. And so I can look back on my notes of like, what were we doing last year at this time when we went to our first scrimmage? What was I taking notes about? Like, we need to work more on this in practice. So let's see if we can be a little more proactive and get some of those things into practice before the scrimmage, so I'm not taking the same note 15 years in a row. Like, we need to work on passing the ball high and off the net, So things that they panic about, I think, just in being, on a couple calls this week and talking with a lot of our area coaches. We just had our first scrimmage yesterday. There's kids that are disappointed in the team that they didn't make. There's parents that are unhappy. I think, volleyball is growing and kids are playing a lot more in the off season. And so there's kind of that expectation of, this is the team I'm going to be on. And I think all coaches are dealing with that. I think as a newer coach, sometimes, you can get caught up in that, the emotions and kind of having to work through that. And then as you've done it a few years, it's like everybody's dealing with that.
Yeah, I would agree. Steve, what are the things, I know you're coaching a new JV team. What are the things that you're noticing that like, oh my gosh, we got to do this right now. We have to be better at this. And
Well,
what are you doing?
so it's interesting. One, our new head coach had formed a club with a lot of kids on the girls' side and he actually started a boys' club, which is helping me tremendously on the boys' side. The coaching methods are kind of old school, but they work, and they're going to a lot of competition, so they're learning a lot. So that's a good thing. Um, a lot of the freshmen that are coming in, and he decided to have a freshman team, and he had 42 freshmen try out, and he's got 16 freshmen. And I think that's not a bad call. And we both talked about it. He would love to, and given a little more time. But think about it: your first year of doing all this admin stuff, it's tough to go. And I'm going to set up another thing for the kids who didn't make it. But we need to work on things like that on both the boys and girls side. The freshman coach is a coach from his club. He knows him well. He wanted to have a coach for his club for the JV, but both of his candidates have kids who are seniors at other high schools, and he didn't want to have that set up. So when I walked in after leaving my high school position, and there's a story behind that, but the bottom line is the AD and I didn't see eye to eye on training methods. Simple as that. I walked in. He said, I need a JV coach. What are you doing? I'm like, well, let me give it a little thought. I want to talk it over with my wife, but probably. And, next day I called him and said, yeah, you got a JV coach. So I have the disappointed girls who are coming up and the girls who haven't been in club as much, or some have, but not many. So I have a pretty unskilled group at this point. They're decent athletes and they are anxious to learn. The ones who I have a couple who've been kind of going back and forth up with the varsity when the varsity needs players to play against them. That's tough because they don't get a chance to integrate as well. Out of my 5 practices last week, I had a couple girls who might practice maybe 2 days. And so that's a negative, but you got to overcome it. And I'm the coach who's jury rigging a rope across the net so we can play short court games and 1v1 and 2v0 and 2v2 and we do that for about half a practice. We probably don't 4 days a week now. This week they don't know how to run a 6-2, which I think is what we're going to run. I was talking to them about defenses, and one of them, so I said, well, you can run this. The first day we ran a 6-6, and they're like, oh, that's awful. That's only little kids run that, and blah, blah. I'm like, oh, here we go. And I said, well, I ran 6-3, and my team that played 6-3 went to National Open Division, and they were 14, so they're 8th graders, and we did fine. We were in the top 32 in the country, so this one girl, well, I've never seen that in Arizona. Have you ever seen that in Arizona? And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? So it was just funny to listen to. And I was just kind of like, so I did a little bit of homework because I was just curious about her club team. And I'm like, yeah. Okay. So my club's 18s team, my old club, I coached for Adversity back in the day. Their 18s finished 18th, ranked 18th in the nation on AES. And, this girl's 18s team, she's probably a 16, but, she's playing on an 18s team at her club, finished 1857th. So I'm like, well, maybe we know a little bit more, but it's one of those things where you kind of go, okay, you've seen some things, you've played some club, you've played some good stuff and got some good experience. Now we have to use it, and I need you on the court to help me with that. I did borrow from our earlier conversations and gave them all notebooks for journaling and pens. They love the pens. I had colored pens. Everybody was fighting over. Can we take 2? Yeah, sure. Go take 2. But I do want them to make some notes and just show me that they've been making notes. And then we've been teaching the 6-2 a lot lately. So it's been a fun week. Now we got to get serious because our first match is Thursday.
Yeah, comes up quickly.
Yeah.
So the thing I hear most from coaches about early season woes is give me a passing drill. I need some drills for passing. There were a couple of posts in Volleyball Coaches and Trainers, and our coaches at my school are talking about the same thing. And we have to pass. We have to be better passers. And my initial thought is most of the work for this season should already be done. Like we if we're coming into the season and we have to learn all kinds of stuff, we're going to be playing catch up all year. So I think I would love it if our players, and I'll just brag on Heidi's kids, they play outside every day. The three of them are hitting the ball around, and if they're not playing volleyball, they're playing some other sport. But they're just by doing that, they're prepared for their season. And I think Heidi's daughter, maybe as an eighth grader, made the JV team in the high school. So, that preparedness shows through. So if you're coming into your season and you need passing help, you need to do a lot more passing. you need to split your courts in half or in thirds and be serving the ball over the net. And I just don't think those passing skills are going to come from any sort of lecture or any sort of bowling drills. You need to see servers and understand what to look at and figure out how to move and build that range. That's probably the biggest one that I notice.
Yeah, well, and I think that that word "should" they should come in being prepared is kind of I don't know. They're coming from so many different backgrounds. So I have kids that played travel softball all summer and will start on my varsity team, and we do skill sessions a couple days a week all summer long, and I haven't seen them much or at all. So they're not coming in the same place as my kids who played club from November to the end of June, and we're in every day during the summer that I had something going on, and we're playing in our leagues, and then I think we're a small school. I have some freshmen that came out that have not played volleyball before or have not touched a volleyball maybe since last year. And so I think that's maybe where you get the disappointment factor a little bit, and they get surprised that an eighth grader, gets a spot ahead of them because they don't see that she's playing in the yard and she's coming in and going to camps and, just playing for fun. But I kind of look at it as this is where they're at. This is a conversation I've had with our C team coach, which has kind of a combination of ninth and 10th and sometimes eighth graders, is, coach the team you have. So you can never work on serving and passing enough. And so if their passing is not where it needs to be, I think the challenge is how do you find a way to work on it a lot without them getting frustrated and wanting to give up. And I think especially at that level, it's the serving is ahead of where the passing is, and I keep saying serve receive. Like we're not doing two partner passing drills. We got to find a way to see serves coming over the net. And I think my own kid that's a comment she's made coming home is I'm seeing harder serves than I'm used to. I've got to get better at receiving the serve. And it's like that's going to come with time. But how do then I as a coach structure my practice so I can not just do serve and pass for 30 minutes and the kids are bored and frustrated with each other, but how can I find, different games where we're starting it with a serve, maybe just some time to work on, serve and pass in a group of 3, and then in many groups of 3. So they're getting lots of reps, in 6-on-6. So they get used to practicing with the person next to them. So we're just kind of trying to find we are finding many different ways to work on receive. How many times am I going to get buzzed?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Whenever I teach, what are the 3 words? It's try, don't, and what's the third one? I can't remember off the top of my head, but like if I say any one of these words, just buzz me. And try is usually, yeah, try is the one. let's try and do this. Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way, Heidi. I mean, I think it was Spiro that said they can't serve receive enough, and I know we've both checked in with Cody Kessel, and Cody said 100% of their practices serve receive. I mean, they always start and they do all sorts of different activities, drills, I guess you could call them, but every one of them starts with a serve. I think that's the way they work on serve, is just to do it continually and then build the rest of the skills around it. Um, and that would be my that would be my bias if I had one, would be to always be hitting the ball over the net. I was surprised by our ninth graders. So we've got 30 kids coming in from their ninth grade, and none of them, not a single one of them, was jump serving. And just a couple of years ago, with a group of kids from this very school, all of them were jump serving in eighth grade. So I'm just sort of floored by the fact that nobody has ever either prompted them or allowed them, one of the two, just to say, hey, here's another way that you can serve the ball. We have plenty of athletes that can do it. And the JV coach said to me, yeah, we really only let the varsity jump serve. I'm like, well, come on over to the freshman court and take a look at the activity they're doing right now. And all 30 of the kids are jumping and hitting the ball over the net. Maybe not from 30 feet, but from 15 or 20 or 25, and some of them from 30. Like, why are we restricting these kids? Why not just open them up to do that? The tougher the serving gets, the better the passing gets, I think.
Well, and I kind of think jump serving is like learning a language, where it's almost easier to do it when you're younger. I don't know that it's like statistically proven like learning a language is supposed to be, has a zone of development. But I think they get older and they think it's a complicated skill. And, sometimes I'm working with 11 and 12-year-olds and I'm like, all right, now we're going to just spend a minute doing jump serves, just so that they're young and they don't care. It's like skiing. You fall down when you're younger and you just get up, right? And then you get older and you go skiing and you fall down. Everybody's looking at me and I, don't know what I'm doing. So I introduce that when I'm working with the younger kids, 5th, 6th grade.
So,
Yeah.
what's one thing you've borrowed from Blocked that you use, so that we don't, because the three of us, I think, are in the play to learn, that sort of thing. But I've got one. I'll share it later. But what have you picked up from Blocked that you think helps move things ahead for your team?
Well, it's kind of interesting as you do different clinics and are in different gyms. You know, I I, I think sometimes if I'm teaching for USA Volleyball or I guess that's the beauty of being in your own gym. I'm not going to say I never do blocked stuff. I think I met John Kessel in 2004, early on in my career, and I used to kind of have the fear of Kessel. Like if he walked into my gym right now, would he go, "Oh my gosh, he's doing that drill"? And I'd have to kind of check myself, or what would Kessel say here, right? Um, I have 13 players on our varsity team this year, and um, 6 or 7 of them have never played with me on a varsity team. And so we're not assuming anything, that they're coming in, and we're working on reading. And, for them, that's a big change. They just, haven't seen a lot of it. But in teaching, maybe how to transition off the net, or how to swing block. They haven't swing blocked before. So I am doing some blocked, this is a ready position for swing blocking. And, we're doing some footwork patterns and things like that. Um, and sometimes I do those every day until they kind of get those footwork patterns down. But we're also every day working on, blocking live hitters um, and having to, transition in actual games. But sometimes when they've never seen it before, we might run a couple footwork patterns. Here's a way to get off the net.
Makes sense.
Yeah, for me, it's I think a big thing that, and maybe this is a more recent development. I don't think there's anything wrong with block training. I think the definition of block training has been, um, let's say, it's advanced some recently. I think being blocked is just working on the same thing. You could do 2 hours of working on passing, yet while you're doing that, while you're focusing on passing, you've got this big block of passing that you're doing. You could be serving, passing, setting, hitting after the pass. You could be doing it in different types of competitions. And maybe all of your feedback that day is going to be on passing and everything is going to be passing. So that's a block. I think the difference is people are looking at skills that are, or they're working on things that are decomposed or broken down so much that they're that they might not translate very well to a game. There's probably, I'll wash my mouth out, but there's probably a place for that as well. If a kid has never once done a swing block move, you want to maybe take them over outside, while everyone else is playing. You take this player out and you do a couple of moves just so they can get the feel of it, and then say, okay, go back in that game and do that what you just did. I think the mistake, if it's a mistake, I think where coaches waste a lot of time is you've got 15 kids standing in a line, a coach is underhanding a ball to someone, and there's 14 kids watching while one coach and one player are working. I think, to me, I think that's what a lot of people think of as block training, where I think it's decomposed. It's not a whole skill. That's where I would draw the line, maybe, is to build whole skills rather than just part skills, because it's really hard to reassemble uh, those skills, if not almost impossible.
Yeah, what I borrowed, because what I guess I'm going to say stole, because what good artists borrow and great artists steal. So I'm going to be a great artist. I stole this. I took a yoga mat and laid it out about 8 to 10 feet off the court. Left side, just because, although it turns out this year I have all kinds of lefties. I might have 3 lefties out of my 13 girls. So, and basically I have them do attack footwork where the drive step off the left foot onto the right left for up is over the yoga mat sideways, so that they have to take a long penultimate step. I got that from somebody who was like, talk about the penultimate step. So, and I'm like, well, first of all, most of my kids probably don't know what penultimate is, and and then half the coaches have to look it up. But like I said, the next to last step here, what are we going to do with that? Get them to
Well, that's a
do
good
some of.
teaching moment.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That's a
and
good moment to teach. Yeah.
well, at the school that I left, where they all have to learn Latin before they get to high school, I thought penultimate would be fun because they'd know, or they could break it down. But at any rate, we did that, and I do that, and try to get their arms back, do a little bit of arm swing. These guys have no idea about how to do most of this stuff. Then translate that into what we renamed a couple of sessions ago with Christensen, was Friedrichsen rather, was the jump spike. So we do jump spikes, and that's our learn the jump serve while not learn how to jump and attack a ball. But I noticed a fair number of them didn't know how to do footwork for that. And so, like you said, with blocking, same kind of thing. The other thing I've been doing, I take them aside and explain good passing technique, and we talk about they tend to take the ball too high. They tend to get jammed in here with not knowing to take a drop step or get away from the ball. Taking it overhand, we'll get there, I hope. Which everybody tells me don't do that. I'm like, Mike Hewlett used to start him at 13 taking the balls overhand, so I'm kind of like, okay, probably not a bad idea. But at the end of it, I brought our video unit out. So the other day, basically, I've got a little, I got my phone sitting there shooting them, and then we've got a 50-inch TV in a protective, frame, and beam it in on video delay, and then they come over, and I'll start by coaching them up, saying, okay, what did you see here? What's going on? Here's what I saw. Go back in, and we get 4 repetitions so they can see themselves 3 or 4 times, and then I just have them go look. And and we're doing server versus passer. Later on, I want to do server to passer to hitter, to setter to hitter, because that's a better way to do it. But right now, it's actually it'd be better. I want them to see themselves, so I want them to make the pass and come right off and see what they did. So it works better in a little bit more blocked approach for them to have the chance to see what happened. And then transition into more active play out of that, where we have a drill called Mike's drill that Mike Hewlett built. And it's basically just, it's a bit of a butterfly, but basically they're rotating through passing. We have a dedicated setter. We have an outside hitter. We've got 2 blockers on the other side and servers. So we're running everything you do in a volleyball point every touch. So we do that kind of progression, but there are blocked elements to it. And I think blocking footwork's probably a good one for taking some time and just kind of teaching the basics and then getting them to do it.
It's interesting to me that, here we are, we're longtime coaches, and we're all talking about form and, doing the movements of the game. And Heidi mentioned this before, and it reminded me of, we have a mutual friend, Harjeev Singh, who works, he's an expert of experts, working with the Orlando Magic on motor learning techniques. And he mentioned a while ago, or asked the question, why do coaches always work on the antecedent? They work on the ending. So we work on the movement rather than what Heidi mentioned before is she's working on the reading part, what to look at. So I guess my question is, how do we as coaches work on that reading portion to work on the beginning rather than just working simply on the ending, which we know the ending could be perfect, but if you miss the beginning, the ending isn't going to matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple things. I would start the game with no net. I would start with a rope, because the net is a barrier. It's looking beyond the net, looking through the net is, a distraction. And so if you want to, and then get them to focus on the server. Yeah, I think looking on the other side of the net and trying to anticipate, I use a little bit of cap training and repetitive training, where I talk to them about how much time do you think you have. So borrowing from Jim Keen's session with us, I have been emphasizing, I want you to have the conversation before the point, every point. I mean, even if we're in a drill and it's serve after serve after serve, I want you to have a conversation about who's doing what. And real quick, it's got to be quick because it comes quick, but you got to be saying, I got seam, I got short seam, you got deep seam, whatever you're going to do. And I reminded them the other day, because I had a more experienced passer the middle passer is getting cut off every play because the person on the left side is cutting her off. Like, are you guys talking about that? Because you guys keep running into each other, and you need to have that conversation in between of who's going to do what. And oh, by the way, I like to keep them in a straight line. And by the way, you're 5 feet behind her, which is confusing her because now you've got a gap that's difficult to talk about. That kind of stuff is what I'll emphasize when I talk to them. But to your point, BJ, better techniques to get them to look and process would be, I'm all ears. I'll steal that.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in. What Heidi was working on
Well,
teaching how to read.
I think like as a 12 or 13-year-old kid, I played a lot of sand volleyball in our yard or in our friend's yard against older guys, and I played co-ed from that age against, grown adults. And I didn't have anyone teaching me. I just learned like this guy, when he's going to tip, like when the set is tight, he comes in and he does this, And so then I got really good at when Kevin came in, I knew he was going to tip because this is how he looked. And then when I played Lauren and he was going to hit line, this is what he looked like, right? And then over time, you start realizing that, oh, a lot of people when they tip look the same as Kevin, right? It's like they're slow in their approach, their legs aren't getting back, so I think I probably learned it the internal hard way that lasts forever. That you kind of figure it out on your own. Um, but I think Karch did a really good segment on the in that new national team development program. And he's done some on YouTube too, where he talks about what he's seeing and what he's looking for. And he'll freeze two clips of this person's attacking the ball and this person's hitting a shot, and what do you see in the difference between the two frames? And he's at a whole nother level. Oh, there's 8 differences between the two of them, and um, some of them I'm picking out, like what do their legs look like? Where's their number? Where's their hitting shoulder? Where's their hitting arm? How tight is their body? When they're coming through on a serve, what does their, hand look like? And so I'm talking about some of these things, what to look at with our players, and I'm getting a lot of deer in the headlights. Looks like they've never heard this before. So, sometimes I'll see high school kids before a serve and they're high fiving their teammates and they're doing a little handshake, and they're not watching the server and where is she looking and where's her toss in relation to her shoulder. Andy, that we were just talking about from Northern Lights, just talked about in his session down at our clinic about having like a little boom window, and how does their hand look like when it's coming through the boom window? Is it facing up? Is it facing sideways? Is it tight? Is it, and I think the kid that's high-fiving their teammate and clicking shoes, and they're not even watching the server. So they have no idea. So I'm kind of trying to say, start paying attention, to these things and see if you can get a early indication of where she's going to serve. And then when you're sitting out in between, and we were at a scrimmage and we're gonna play this team next, and we're sitting out, like, players have tendencies. So what do we know about this player? Where does the setter put the ball when she's passed tight? What does she do with it? In this rotation, who does she like to set, and where does the setter like to, or where does the hitter like to put the ball? So I think I have a lot of smart players that kind of learn to pay attention. We, are in the gym with our same teammates every day. It's like people have tendencies. Let's start figuring them out.
Yeah, I think that as you were saying that, the other thing I think might help them is to teach them to be deceptive when they are doing things. Notice what they're doing. So get them. Hey, hit 4-4. Hit down the line. Okay, now what are you doing to do that? To get them focused on kind of them. Or when you're serving, how do you know? When you're serving to zone 1 versus zone 5, what are you doing differently? And then say, okay, that what's going on the other side of the net, and maybe there's an opportunity there. I have much less experienced players, so I think one of the things that that helps them with reading is just playing twos. And we played 2v0 the other day for the first time, which was when I explained 2v0, they were what? And I had that little there. If you do, there's a USAV it's got like 300 subscribers or something, but a little channel they put together. There's 3 minutes of video. It's got the torque serve, it's got 2v0, it's got Superman spike, it's got all those simple ones. But I showed them that before, we had the video out before practice. We went over, we're going to do 2v0, showed them. They went out, and it took them about 5 minutes to figure it out. Some faster than others. That's a big learning for me in the last year or so. Is I watch myself go around the court, and I get something started, and I just go, stop. I'm like, what? There's this urge to go and help them do whatever it is I just sent them out to do. I'm like, let them figure it out, for God's sake. And if you give them 5 minutes, they figure it out. So it's like, it looks like hell for 5 to maybe even 10 minutes, and they figure it out. And, I had them playing a 2-ball thing the other, both sides serving. And they were like, what? We can't do that. And like, okay, well, you're gonna, and go figure it out. And after a while, you would hear them go, 3, 2, 1, serve. And, and they were having a ball with it. But it took them about 5 or 10 minutes to figure something out. And I would have, in the old days, I would have been going, no, you need to do this. And then I'm like, just stop, just let them play. And some parents and some athletic directors will look at that and go, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I'm letting them learn.
We had one of those the other day, and again, working with freshmen, which I'm enjoying more and more. We're doing a jump and hit, just jump and hit back and forth across the net with a partner. After they kind of got comfortable, I said to them, okay, let's alternate floater and topspin. And so every other ball, floater, topspin, floater, topspin. Then the freshman coach walked over. She's evaluating, trying to figure out her team. She said, are you going to explain to them how to hit a floater and topspin? And I said, nope.
And that's why I'm not at my other school.
Well, if they figure it out on their own, it's going to stick longer. I guess that's the biggest thing. And there's another question, I guess, for Heidi. Because I know we've been at this, I guess I've been doing a little bit longer, but I probably didn't get woken up to the sport much earlier than you did. How did you start convincing yourself? Because I know you've done this, but how did you start convincing yourself to get away from just copying the quote unquote successful coaches or coaches that have won? I guess I don't want to name any names like Russ Rose or something like that, but we tend to copy people that are having success, and often that's just not a good path. How did you start convincing yourself to trust yourself more?
Well, I think early on, I went to my first CAP clinic, and right after my first year of being a varsity coach, I was 21 or 22 years old, and I had Cecile and John Kessel as my cadre, and a lot of what John was saying and doing was kind of my beach background growing up, just a lot of playing, and so that made sense. And so I went into my first year at Cloquet, and we in Barnum, and we played a lot. Like, that's how I learned how we played a lot of 2-on-2 and 3-on-3 and 4-on-4. And I was able to take programs that had only won 3 or 4 games, and we won 11, just from playing volleyball. But then I think I kind of went through a period of, like, when you go and watch all these Division I coaches, is just, well, there's a reason they're so good, right? And they're at that level. And so then you want to copy some of their drills. Like, okay, we got to 11 wins or 12 wins. How do we get to 20? So I think I went through a period of then, well, now I've got to teach technique, or now I have to teach skill, or now I need better drills. And so I kind of entertain, doing some of that, just because this program, this coach, they win more. And then I think I really got into a period of studying and kind of looking at more of the motor learning and the science and the how we learn type of stuff. It was kind of, having to put some time in reading books. I have a lot of books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of articles. I have a lot of magazines, and kind of learning how to filter through. And um, you maybe don't remember this, but BJ, you and I were tagged on a lot of emails from John Kessel over the years with Hodgson and Dan Mickle and Brian Swente, and it was kind of like, um, I was so eager to learn, but also just be around other people who were passionate about volleyball. But I kind of felt like if you're going to keep company with these people, you also have to keep up, right? Like you want to have these
That's true.
discussions. If you want to have these discussions like we're having, you better know something and you better bring something to the conversation. Or even I think like with Harjeev now, it's like when you talk about, um, the stuff that he's studying and what's the ecological approach and dynamic systems training and some of that. It's like I feel like I have to keep up in order to talk with Lauren or to talk with some of these people, when you talk about degrees of freedom. And so it's doing a lot of study. So I think when I look at drills online now and I listen to Russ Rose or I listen to whoever it is, Beth Lanier, Mary Wise, Hugh McCutcheon, pick your Division One coach. I'm kind of able to filter it a little bit, like what can I take from this? What makes this person really good? Are they really good at their working with their assistant coaches, selling their vision, getting good athletes, recruiting? It's not always just like the drill that they run, or maybe it's not the drill they run at all. Maybe the kids have played a lot of club over a lot of years. So um, it's trying to figure out like what can I take from that coach. So I'm not copying, and I think I kind of filter everything through like as best I know the science of motor learning and motivation and um, being a teacher. And I kind of try to look at what can I as a coach do to make the kids better.
Yeah, I think Heidi, that is a really good point. Some of the waters that we're swimming in, we're I guess I don't want to say lucky, but we've done the work to be around some people that really know what they're doing and do a lot of the hard, first, it's the primary research that they're reading. And it would be tough for somebody like you or me who has a full-time job to do a ton of primary research. But just, I think the thing that we bring to people like that, to a Harjeev or, even Doc Ricky, somebody like that, is we bring good questions. We may not have all of the background, but here's something that I'm thinking about. How does this apply based on the research that or if I see something that another coach is doing, I'll fire off an email to Rob Gray, who has a great book out now, the How We Learn to Move. Just an incredible resource for coaches. I mean, this information now is so readily available about how we can teach motor skills. It used to be really hard to come by the information. Now it's out there, and I think we can we can do a better job of asking those questions and then delivering that information. It's almost like translating it. Some of the research folks really go deep into what they're talking about, and you've got to know all the terminology and the various ideas. But for us, that if we have a basic understanding of that, we can ask a few questions. Maybe we can translate that into, well, here's how it works for volleyball. If you do this instead of that, you can be, more efficient in your practice.
Yeah,
I don't know
and
if
I
you
think
see that. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it was kind of like I had a really smart math and science teachers in high school, but nobody understood what they were saying. And so then my classmates would say, "Can you help me?" And it's like, because I would understand the math, or I could teach myself the math, and then I could explain it, so they can understand it. So I think my challenge is, how do you use this with second and third and fourth and fifth graders that I'm trying to teach? And I'm lucky that I work with elementary kids, so I kind of get to not experiment, but we get to try some of this out, um, in my PE classes. But then I work with our youth program from first and second grade camp, and then we start our teams in third grade. So I'm not necessarily explaining to their coaches, we're doing motor learning here and distributing our practice so that we're not massing everything. I might just say, instead of having them, serve for 10 minutes at a time, maybe do 1 minute serving bouts throughout your practice, you know. Or here are some games you can play, like speedball, so they're getting more touches. Um, but it's kind of trying to, sell other people on it. And then I think as a new coach, um, you're just trying to figure out how to run a practice and how to plan a practice. So our junior varsity coach this year is brand new, second year teacher, and I caught out of the corner of my eye the other day, 11 people standing in a line tossing the ball to one setter, and I sped off across the gym, and I was smoke coming out of my ears, like, I gotta fix this right away, right? Not just like we do with players when they make mistakes, but I'm gonna fix this, coach. And then and then I got over there and I had to take a couple deep breaths, and you know um she's just trying to figure out how to run a hitting drill, and how do I not embarrass her in front of her team, and how do I try to help her out and get her to understand how we can be a little more efficient, um, so that she's convinced that she wants to learn more, and that the kids can see the value in it too. So um, it's kind of trying to take what and then how do you share that with other people so you don't turn them off, and they don't want to see you coming towards their court.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We had something very similar the other day. We During our tryouts, the varsity coach, actually the varsity assistant, was running the tryout. And he would say what the activity was going to be, and then everybody goes off to their courts. And so one of the first activities was, hey, we're going to serve back and forth. Just work on your serve. And it's exactly what you said. It's a bunch of serving reps, one after the next. And we went over to the freshman court, and somebody serves and the partner catches, and then she would toss it and serve. I'm like, hey, rather than catching that ball, why don't you just get the extra rep and see if you can pop it up to yourself? Pass that ball up and then grab it and then go through your serving routine. Right? Right there, just by doing that, we doubled the amount of contacts that the players were getting. So then if you say you pop it up to yourself and then you set it and then you catch it, now we've tripled the amount of contacts and not much more time.
And you started to read.
It's just, yeah, it's very little simple things like that. Going back to our reading thing, when we do simple serving drills like that, where it's a partner serving, after the player serves, we'll have them move to some other place on the court. And if you think about that, the other player, the receiving player, has to dig it, set it, and then catch it. And the very next thing they have to do is what Steve was talking about. They got to look through the net. They got to find their partner because their partner is not where you expected them to be. And then they've got to hit from there with a different angle. They're building range because they're hitting different angles from around the court, and just going back and forth like that, always moving after you attack. It's just simple little things like that new coaches probably don't know yet. And maybe, you know what, there are a lot of Division 1 coaches that don't know that stuff because they're just copying,
Well, the other thing
what
we've got to get away from, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody, is we got to get away from the I need to be right mentality, and be open to, as an example, I decided to do in a row serving for a couple times this week. Well, the reason behind it was I've been teaching a bunch of them, and I'm like, we're either, I said, well, look, we're going to at our level, I want to work on a standing float serve or the torque serve, because I've got kids who can't serve other than underhand. And I said, underhand's okay, but torque serve would be better. So, I've got the classic, overhand float serve walkers who walk into it and their hips are moving this way. I'm like, look, you just right foot, left foot. That's all you need. Just will refuse to do it, and then you say, oh well, we're gonna do 15 in a row, and actually they picked the number, and they're there for 15 minutes, trying to get it in a row and failing and all that. And then to watch them game it, the last time we went through I could see this girl coming up, and I'm watching just kind of at the corner of my eye, and they're at 13, 14. And the girl who's been struggling just looks at the girl behind her and they switch. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let her know I noticed that, but I'm not gonna get on her about it because it was a way to solve the problem. And good on you to figure out how to get your team ahead, but let's not make it about you not doing it because you're struggling with it. Let's go with something you know. And the interesting thing was to watch a little bit of learning, because the kids who were struggling with their serve went back to their underhand at some point. It took a lot of reps for them to go, I have to give this up to do what I can do to get the ball in. And I'm like, look, when we go to matches, it's going to be important for you to get the ball in. I want you to move ahead with these. By the way, the torque serve translates really well into overhand, and I guarantee you by the end of the season, you'll be doing overhand if you start with the torque serve. If you start with the underhand, I can't guarantee that as much. And, trust me, you shouldn't be taking these steps. And you get some who do and some who just refuse. And it's like, you'll show them, you'll work it. It's like, okay, I could beat them up, but that's not what I'm there for. It's high school volleyball. They're supposed to have fun. If they were playing for pay, maybe I'd get on them and say, gee, we might have to cut you loose. But they need enough encouragement to get better. And there's days I have to bite my tongue, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, just almost anybody that's read any of my stuff would think I never decompose a skill, but that's probably not true. I have players that are struggling to serve overhand. I have them. I'll hold my hand out right above their right shoulder and make them do like chicken wings with their arms. Right, they put your thumbs in your armpits and you have chicken wings, and I just hold that hand right above their right shoulder and say, really hit my hand with that right elbow. And they first, they kind of wing it a little bit. And I'm like, no, hit it, really hit it. And they learn so quickly. It's just like the torque serve. They learn so quickly that if they're moving their shoulders all together, that power comes. It takes 2, 3, 4 reps. And like, okay, now hit the ball in that same way, not with your elbow, but hit it with your hand. And it's amazing how quickly that little bit of understanding can help. I don't think it's an anecdote for every single thing, but in that instance, that feels like that little bit helps to get them over a hump.
I find myself going back to some. I did a series back when I was first doing videos. We had a setter from Ohio State who came in, and she was one of our coaches, but she was working on setting, and I just got all of her drills, and they were drills of breaking down all kinds of, and I use a lot of them because the feel for a ball, a 1 foot against the wall, 10 feet against the wall with setting or overhand passing They can get a lot of reps, and then we can go on the court, and then we go on in the court and do something with it. But I just haven't found a better way for the entire team to develop their hands, because I'm in the I do not want. I know I'm going to have dedicated setters, but you guys need to know how to set a ball and how to make a good overhand pass, and you can't, just because you're not a setter, not develop that skill. And we're going to work on that. Do we do a ton of it? No, but I'd say the other thing I did the other day was I had them triangle setting, and giving each other feedback. And yeah, that's really drill based, but a little bit of that can get them, 5 reps each, and then we go out on the court and try to maybe we do an out of system setting activity where they're getting the second ball and they got to set it to somebody, and get somebody a swing. Those are the kinds of things that I do break down a little bit, just because I haven't found a better way in practice. They wind up attack setting the ball, throwing their hands at the ball, which drives me nuts. But it's another
That's
story.
probably something we could have talked about in this. We're running short on our time,
Yeah, we
but
can do
just
that.
feedback, how to give each other feedback and all that kind of stuff. But Heidi, just to run us out here, how's the team going to be this year? Where are you going to fall in your area?
Um, we look pretty good. We have our section scrimmage tomorrow, so that'll be our big test. Those are kind of the teams that we have to beat to make it to the state tournament. So I think we'll see some tougher competition than maybe we did yesterday. But we have a lot of kids who, kind of like Steve was just saying, we teach everybody how to set, and we teach them how to play more than one position. So I think my assistant coach always says this is what's different about our program. It's not like I'm a middle and I'm only going to block and play middle. It's like our middles know how to play back row, and our outsides know how to block in the middle. And so I think you have a kid who, our middle tweaked her ankle yesterday, and you just put somebody else in there. And I think they're adaptable in, um, kind of being able to be an athlete and play wherever we need them. And I think after years of not having the backup setter ready to go, or the backup middle ready to go when someone has an unfortunate injury, we really work on developing a lot of depth. And kind of just, we lost our 4-year starting setter, leading into the conference championship and the section playoffs last year, and made it all the way to the finals. So I kind of have a team of people who can go wherever you need them to go. Um,
That's
so I
great.
haven't figured out where everybody is gonna, what their main position is going to be, but I like the versatility
Well,
of
I
the
like that you
group.
have the
I'm looking forward to
mentality.
getting that Cloquet state championship T-shirt.
Yeah, I like that you have the mentality that they accept that, and it's no big deal, because you do get folks that I'm an outside. I'm like, well, maybe, and they get all bent out of shape if you say, hey, I need you to play right side this week, or I need you to do something else. That's great. You have
Well,
that. You've developed that.
and I think that's something that I've just learned over time is, before we started yesterday, I pulled my seniors over one at a time and just said, we're going to move you around. We're going to have you play some different spots. You're going to take turns line judging. And, we don't want you to freak out about it. Just, people are going to be, looking at how you're acting and responding to these things. So if you're sitting on the bench and you're complaining about not being in the scrimmage, or you're wondering, why am I not playing in the spot I usually do, then the new kids to the team are going to feed off of that. And I think that's a conversation that even a couple years ago I wouldn't have thought to have ahead of time. And then you have the senior who's line judging, who's having a meltdown. Why aren't I setting? And so just being proactive in kind of letting them know what to expect, and then being able to catch them doing a good job of that and say, hey, that's what we wanted to see, and you were a good model, and look at how the team responded to your actions. Um, so it's kind of trying to
Yeah.
front load it a little bit.
Feels like to me like every kid really wants to play. So those kids, the fringe kids that are, eighth, ninth, 10th on the bench, it benefits them to learn multiple positions because you never
Yep.
know, you're an injury away. And it's happened to all of us, I'm sure, where, some starter or a main piece of the puzzle gets injured and you need somebody else to jump in. And it's got to be one of those, one of those next kids. It has to be, you know? Well, Steve, we should probably wrap it up. We've been over an hour.
Yes, and it's been a great hour. And I was thinking, boy, probably the last 2 minutes is going to be a part that I want to tag, because I think having those conversations with your kids, especially at the high school level, can be tremendously helpful. And I think back to Karch and the national team, the Olympic team, working and letting everybody know what their roles were, and that paid off big time in the Olympics. So it's something you can do just about everywhere. So Heidi, thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll probably do it again. Hope we made your nerves feel good. It's not that big a deal to be on camera, and I'll have this out as a podcast as well on our podcast setup.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we'll see you, BJ. See you next time.
Yep. See you later. That one really nice.